welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Flippin the Birds.
He's into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome all to another episode of Flippin the Birds. I am not Brian, as you can tell. Those familiar with how the New York Giants fared this past week understand that Brian
went right back onto mute as soon as he was dropping his punchline.
Yeah, you know what? I have to firmly believe
there's no other culprit but Brian trying to interfere as soon as he heard the jokes start to be told.
Yep.
But yeah, Stan Jones is ruining the stomachs of Giants fans everywhere. And of course, so Brian now is not here. It is myself. It is Eric Reese that you are stuck with. But welcome to another episode of We Are Here to talk some birds. A little bit, not quite a recap. We already went over that in Saturday's show. But we're going to talk a little bit more about what happened during that game. We're going to talk a little bit about what our kind of biggest takeaways, or I guess more so, focusing on Jalen Hurts, who has been one of our biggest question marks early on. So kind of just leaning into that right away. And everyone be sure to like this on YouTube. Be sure to share if you're watching on Twitter, on Facebook. And be sure to let us know how you felt about Jalen Hurts after that Week 1 performance. But Eric, why don't we start with you as I try and get
readjusted over there
microphone once again.
Gotcha.
What did you see from Jalen?
So there's two tales to Jalen in that Packers game. There's obviously some good parts to it. Obviously some very ugly parts. Very ugly parts had to do wildly enough with a lack of motion, which I thought you'd be used to as far as last year is concerned. Unfortunately, 2 interceptions came from when he was not, but there was no motion before the snap. However, it looks like when there was motion, and that we all know that's a big part of the offense, he was pretty decent. Overall, not a good day from Jalen as far as his total performance goes. I think that has a lot to do with not having one snap at all during the preseason. So I think this is Week 1 sloppy preseason football. But I will say this. What is one thing? I'll ask you this. What is one thing that Jalen Hurts was criticized and ridiculed for last year so often before he snaps the ball, like pre-snap reads?
Yeah. No, absolutely. His IQ for the game, his kind of game ability to read defenses has been the biggest it's probably up there for the biggest criticism
I would say so
throughout his career, but especially last year. And last year was an especially extenuating circumstance where you're not having those added wrinkles to the offense, whether it's Jalen Hurts adapting at the line, whether it's pre-snap motion, whatever it is. And you pointed out that his biggest errors in Friday's game did come in plays that did not have motion. I think that plays a part of the role, but not every play is going to have pre-snap motion.
Right.
More so, I think you kind of have to take it play by play. But if you're looking for a consistent theme, the consistent theme is force and throws is what I saw in both of those picks.
Absolutely, there were throws forced. I think you and I talked a little bit earlier about that second interception to Alexander in the end zone to Brown. After looking at the film, during the game, you have every right to be like, okay, why are you throwing in the double coverage? Why are you forcing that pass? He was clearly covered. And then when you see it on film, Baldinger's actually the one who highlighted it on his account. When you see it on film, Brown calls for it. He's wide open. And the pass, honestly, and it just doesn't have enough zip to get directly to Brown in the way that you would want it to. But Brown also slips too. I think that he might have hightailed it more center away from Alexander. But Alexander does a fantastic job of actually recovering while that ball is in the air. So to that reason as to why it was intercepted, I feel that, Jalen Hurts needed to get more behind that ball. And the look was there, the execution just wasn't. But I will say, to the pre-snap notion that I brought up earlier, he had a perfect quarterback rating against the blitz. He was decisive. He got the ball out and looked fine in areas where he was criticized last season. I believe that this game here, there was a little bit of hero ball aspect, but at the same time, I can't be too mad about both interceptions. The first interception, slop. Second interception, I think it's just poor execution, but the idea was actually there. You just have to watch it back.
Yeah, and I'm actually looking for the particular Baldy video now. So if you have it, send it to me so that we can show everyone real quick. Maybe we don't get the Baldy in there, but we at least get the slow down play. My issue with that particular play, right, is merely the fact that you are already in kind of a restricted yardage situation. You're kind of in a catch-22 where you're up against it because you're inside the red zone, but you're not exactly close enough to the point where you can just fire it on in there. Like there is an opportunity for defenders to adjust. So I think that the idea, the conception of the plan was not bad. And again, I do understand that AJ Brown's calling for the ball, but there's just a little bit of a difference when you're in that kind of in between spot where it just adds a lot more risk to it. Jay Fizzle checks in. What's up, Jay Fizz? He was wide open. He also brings up that AJ Brown did slip, and AJ's a physical guy, so like there's an honest chance that he could have fought for that ball if he didn't slip. That being said, I have to look at it again. I want to see how much room there was for him to run. Obviously, he didn't have a great day running at all. But we can talk about the second pick was Fizz's fault. We can talk about the field all that we want, and how. And I'm not saying Fizz is blaming the field, but we can talk about the field all we want and how it kind of led to a lot of issues throughout the day. But there's just a certain risk that you run, right? I'm not saying that we have to lambaste Jalen Hurts for it. I'm not saying that we have to call for, Kenny Pickett or anything crazy like that. The second someone starts calling for Kenny Pickett, it's time to check him into the old insane asylum. But what I am saying is that it was a risk. He took it. That's fine. And it didn't pay off, right? So that is part of quarterbacking, and he's been taking a few more of those risks lately, and we saw that even with the first interception that he threw, although I'd argue that was much closer to just being a flat-out bad decision than the second one. But, I mean, listen, if we're talking overall, I think part of this is these guys needed to play in the preseason, right? I think that has to be a non-negotiable in future years. Part of it at the same time is Hurts is, in my opinion, pressing a little bit, right? And, we've seen that at times where he tries to – I don't think it's Carson Wentz levels of pressing, but there's times where he tries to force some throws, and it is what it is. Quarterbacks have flaws. It's something that I think that he has to trim down on if, I hate to say this because this is going to make him sound like a game manager, and, how many years have people fought game manager things from Jalen Hurts, but he's got to let, his star players that are around him, his star teammates, do their thing, right? And I get it, with AJ where he's kind of not strictly a possession guy, but he's able to be a star in that possession receiving game. But at the same time, you have to be able to rely on, Devontae Smith just to run the hell out of that route. You got to be able to rely on a Jahan Dotson to use his speed to separate, on Saquon Barkley to be able to make guys miss in the open field, AJ Brown to be able to moss some guys straight up. Like, you have to be able to rely on these guys in those situations. So forcing throws isn't going to get it done really at any level. But listen, it's a long season. It's one game. And I think that, especially with what you talked about, Eric, about how he played against the blitz, there was a lot to like about Hurts, how Hurts played as well.
Yeah. And the idea of a game manager, I don't think that should be a moniker or a name that's kind of looked down upon. To me, game manager, and to everyone else, they'll probably disagree, but game manager is almost a synonym to field general, because as a field general, you're just managing the game anyway. And you're doing all the things that you just said. You're relying on your players to the yards after the catch, that them use that skill to, you have AJ Brown and his his size. You're relying on him to use that and make some plays. Not everything has to be the perfect throw, the perfect read. Sometimes you got to make a calculated risk. I don't think the risks he made on that first interception was calculated. I think the risk he made on the second interception, after watching that video back, was calculated, just poorly executed. I think there's a lot of things that are kind of blown out of proportion week one about Jalen Hurts' game. I don't think it's a cause for concern throughout the entire season. And this is absolutely the reason why I dropped that, that overreaction word in previewing this tonight's episode. I don't think there's anything to really worry about, because the majority of what I did see is him feeling actually a little bit more comfortable after missing a whole preseason and a lot of Kellen Moore's offense. Just some poor mistakes, and those poor mistakes were capitalized on. It's almost kind of like when you play a game of Madden yourself, and you're having a pretty good day, except for all right, man, I hit the wrong button. Well, he hit the wrong button a few times, so. And, 2 interceptions look a lot like, just as ugly as to the eye as can be.
Yeah, there's I think there's something to be said about that kind of, rust that we were talking about, or hitting the wrong button. Duck brings up rust. I think your Madden metaphor is pretty good. Again, this is an argument for playing in the preseason. I think that kind of helps you tighten up on those situations. Really focus, and we saw that with a lot of different players, on the offense at times. The Saquon slip, I think, is pure field. I don't think that's anything on his part there specifically. But when we're talking about Jalen Hurts, like, am I concerned about Jalen Hurts for the rest of the season? No, I'm not. And it's for the same reasons that you laid out. Like the areas that he struggled last year, he succeeded this past Sunday, right? Against the blitz. That is a huge, you cannot understate how huge of a difference that was in Jalen Hurts on Friday versus last season, right? So for him to be making those changes already, that's super encouraging. I have faith in what I've seen so far, with new offensive coordinator Kellen Moore and what he's going to be instilling. Saquon Barkley is an insane beast in the backfield to be able to rely on. Devontae Smith, I think, had an understated, fantastic game. Obviously, he didn't make it into the end zone, but he was definitely killing it. And, when you're looking at any concerns for the season moving forward, I think that there's a couple on the defensive side, although the defense overall played great. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But I do first have the ball play. You did send it.
Shout out to Jay Fizz for sending that one over Twitter to me. So we're going to get the opportunity to pull this up over here.
There it is.
There we go.
All right. So,
and can we make that if we can bigger? Like maybe more? Yeah. There you go.
Receiver's going to go uncover, and AJ Brown does. He's got his hand up in the air right there. In fact, he's got 2 hands in the air. That gives Jai.
I'm going to pause that real quick because I haven't done this much with StreamYard, but is everyone else able to hear Baldy at this moment, or am I just?
Yeah, yeah. I'm able to, so hopefully that means everybody else.
All right back at it here. Let's see. Let's start that fresh.
Yeah. Let's watch this red zone interception here, because it always falls on the quarterback, even though it's not always on the quarterback. The protection is fantastic. It's really just a cradle of love right there. It's a good pocket. If you're going to get outside the pocket, though, all right, you hope your receiver is going to go uncover. And A.J. Brown does. He's got his hand up in the air right there. In fact, he's got 2 hands in the air. That gives Jair Alexander.
That ball needs to be in the air by now.
So Jalen's going to throw it. And the throw's not bad. But right here, A.J. slips. So he can't adjust to the ball. Like everybody slipped in this game. And he slips and allows Jair to get to the ball before A.J. can. So credit Jair. It's a great play by him. Great play. brings it out of the end zone.
Yeah, no, I think that you kind of hit it perfectly where it's like the ball needed to be out a bit earlier, first and foremost. Like once you see AJ put his hand up, like that's when you really need to be getting the ball out within a second after that, right? The slip did obviously factor into it. Jair made a great play, as Jay Fizz says.
Yes.
Like the end of the day, it kind of sucked that it happened. But it's not necessarily something that I have long-term concerns over. And if you watch that, he didn't really have an opportunity to escape out to the side. Green Bay did kind of a great job overall throughout that game, making sure that he didn't have an opportunity to escape. I'm not worried about I'm not worried yet. The field and the starters didn't play at all during the preseason. Hurts' biggest weakness became his strength. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Philly Irish, Drew Evo, definitely a good point. Listen, there's not we're nitpicking. I think is important to say.
No, it's absolutely true. Yeah,
I don't think that there's anyone here who's worried about Jalen Hurts moving forward. Like even if let's talk about the other end of Jalen Hurts' game, the other issue that he had. I already touched on it briefly, but that escapability, right? We didn't see the classic Jalen Hurts escapability. Now, part of that I think is the field condition. Part of that is, listen, it's the first game, had no preseason, which is an issue with the coaching staff. That's not an excuse, mind you. And then on top of that, Green Bay just played the hell out of it. They did not let him escape, right? So when you factor those three things in together, you didn't have a great game on the ground by Jalen Hurts. At the same time, he also made some huge plays on the ground. So I'm not concerned about that long term. What did you see about him as a runner during that game, Eric?
It took off a lot, but I thought the Packers contained him pretty well, kind of in what you were saying. I don't think that he necessarily he didn't break off the huge chunk, but he got you the yardage or to at least help advance the drive. And without him on the ground, sometimes it did feel like the drive could have stalled. So he did his job as far as that's concerned. You like to see fumbles cleaned up, and that has everything to do with just I chalk up a lot of these turnovers to the offense not seeing the field, and this is their first time they go live in competition is literally week 1 of the season that counts. So yeah, this is all stuff that clearly needs to be cleaned up. They have 10 days to do it before Monday in Philly, and I just don't. Kind of going back to what you were echoing, I don't think there's a ton to worry about, even on the ground. I will say, as a play is concerned, the brotherly shove, it doesn't really seem to get as much pop on it. So that's the one rushing play with Jalen Hurts that I'm a little bit concerned about. And in that, I guess that aspect, if Hurts is going to get the ball to run, then you need that snap to go off without a hitch. So any sort of mix up, any sort of whatever it may be, miscommunication, if there is any, or if that's being overblown, hopefully that's being overblown. And I think it is. I saw some, posts about what was it, Jurgens and Hurts. It looked like they were on a sideline. I don't think they were jawing at each other. I think they were trying to get on the same page. I don't see Hurts as somebody who would be jawing with a teammate. I see him as the leader that he kind of, portrays, and it's kind of been said by a lot of his teammates to back it up. So, again, this is an overreaction. We're bringing this to the plate because this, these are some flaws that happened in week 1, but we're good. We're good to go.
Hear me now. The brotherly shove is dead. And I don't mean that they're going to stop doing it. I don't mean because they're going to do it.
Okay, that's what I meant then.
They're going to keep doing it.
Stop. I'm like, no, they're not.
No, they're going to do it even harder. They're going to do it even harder. But they're not going to succeed, right? And part of it, yes, is that you don't have Jason Kelsey, being a sneaky little bitch in there, like sneaking that ball forward. That was huge for Philadelphia, obviously. You don't have that. On top of that, the officials are cracking down on this play even more. This play has not been made illegal by the NFL. However, the scrutiny of the officiating crew during it continues to increase in each and every season, right? So let's look at it. First of all, you're not having Jason Kelsey as the lead man on that play anymore. You now have Cam Jurgens, who I think has, for the most part, played well in one game as center so far, but still relatively new in that role and new to playing that specific role in the brotherly shove, right? Over time, could he get better at it? Absolutely. But for now, that is a weakness in that play's game, right? On top of that, right, defenders are wisening up to this play as well. You have more and more guys who are just leaping the pile, going headlong right into Jalen Hurts' head. And how much punishment are you going to continue to put your quarterback through when you have an absolute monster of a man in the backfield, the beast of the backfield in Saquon Barkley, that teams cannot stop, mind you? So I understand that, this was a great move that Philadelphia kind of coined, something that Jalen Hurts, in a sense, also kind of coined. It's Sirianni's baby, it's Jalen Hurts' baby, it's the Philadelphia Eagles' baby. I get that. It's time to put it in the bin. It's done. It's over, right? They're going to do it for the rest of the season. It's going to show up in the playoffs. They're going to try and do it as if they make it to the Super Bowl as their version of Philly. It's not going to work, right? This is just something that it's come. It was fantastic. It ran its course, right? So it is what it is. I think it's time to move on. I think it's time to, embrace Saquon Barkley as a guy who can literally run anyone over and just let him pick up the touchdown. And maybe you'll have Jalen Hurts have an issue with him not having, as many touchdowns on the year. And yeah, there's going to be some schools that are not going to get some AC units because Jalen Hurts isn't getting as many touchdowns. But, all that being considered, we're trying to win games here, right? Jeffrey Lurie, cut the check. Nick Sirianni, cut the check for the money that Jalen Hurts does not give in terms of touchdowns, right? We need to be scoring touchdowns. We cannot afford to be lackadaisically giving up the ball on the 1 yard line or fourth downs at the 40-yard line, whatever the case may be, right? You have to move on from a play that is not working, right? Because I'll tell you this, the definition of insanity is not doing the same thing over and over again, contrary to what everyone says, but it pisses me the hell off when you do it over and over and over again. So it's time to move on. It's time to put it away. You have the greatest running back, arguably, that has played for the Philadelphia Eagles, possibly in the history of the organization, if we're going peak for peak, right?
Hey, Deuce Staley. Hey.
Okay, of all the running backs.
hey.
Deuce. I love Deuce, but of all the running backs, that's who you come. Okay.
That's my guy. That's
Deuce Staley and Greg Ward. Love it. Okay.
That's a Super Bowl team. And that's a foundation.
You went out and you got
team.
Saquon Barkley for a reason, right? And that reason was to dominate. Duck, I can confirm for a fact that I'm smarter than Albert Einstein because I'm still alive. Where's he? What's he got to say? Nothing.
I think he's got has an apple ever fallen on your head?
That's definitely the wrong guy. You're thinking of Isaac Newton.
Yeah,
Isaac Newton. Once again, I'm
1 for 2. I was 50%. I was close.
That's
close.
That's fine.
Almost there.
That's fine. It was bound to happen with us.
I was an English major, not as whatever.
I mean, physics, history. You can take your pick with that one. That
science, history. Words.
It's just rough either way.
All I know is about Rasmus Ristolainen.
There we go. Yeah. All right. So. Rasmus Ristolainen, if you bring him in, I'm comfortable with you running the brotherly shove with him because I think that he'll be able to actually work it in. But you can't keep doing this to Jalen Hurts. You're going to just beat up your quarterback for this is a complete nonsensical reason. You have a running back who can absolutely destroy opposing defensive lines, a guy who, let's say that you're 4th and 1, right around the 40. Let's not even talk goal line situations, right? You're around the 40. It's 4th and 1. You just need to pick up that 1 yard. You give it to Saquon Barkley. He's more than likely going to get the odds are astronomical. I'm not an analyst, but if you break out an analytic guy, one of those human calculators, they're going to tell you the odds are that guy's getting over that first down marker. On top of that, you have the ability to earn exponentially more yards on that same play because he can break it off at any moment, right? So you're just doing yourself, the team, the fans, everybody a disservice by not giving the ball to Saquon Barkley and trying to run the tush push instead. But that's my big rant on that.
I think by the bye week, you'll be like, let's bring back the tush push.
Never in a million years.
It'll be all right.
Not until
Or-
Jason Kelsey comes back. If Jason Kelsey comes back during the season, then I'll say, yeah, no, bring it back. But not until that moment.
Well, what about if they go for it on 1st and 10 when no one's expecting it?
It's not the Spanish Inquisition, right?
It might be the Trojan horse even. See, I know that.
Tell you what. You know what people aren't going to expect? It's 4th and 1, and you hand the ball to Saquon Barkley. That's what people aren't going to expect.
You think that DeAndre Swift looks back at that game, the week 1 game, and goes,
He's
why
got
are they
bigger
running the
problems
ball
going
now?
on right now, man. He's got bigger problems going on right now. I don't think he's too worried about it. Had it not been for that,
But
he
what if he
probably
had a
would be.
moment? But what if he had a moment?
Well, he may have quite a few coming up. So when that moment comes, then yeah, perhaps he would look at that moment and say, you know, why didn't they run the ball to me instead of giving it to Jalen every time? But
Either
listen,
way,
it worked better then than it does now. It's not going to work. We saw it not work throughout the preseason, and I get it. Jalen wasn't running it then, but I had a lot to say about it then, and we saw it when Jalen was running it too, and it's still not working. You just can't do it.
Yeah, it just wasn't going to work with Pickett really, or McKee. There's, that's
Or Jalen, because it hasn't been better with Jalen.
I think it has. I just think that, obviously it's not the same with Kelsey. I think that's the glaring part of this. Once this with behind Jurgens starts to kind of become a more normal thing, because it's not going away, it'll be a little bit more fluid, and I think it works just as well. I have a lot of faith in that. Still happening and still working to convert 4th and 1s. But there's no denying that you are hitting the nail squarely on the head, that giving the ball off to Saquon Barkley would be the best option in a lot of scenarios, because he, as you said, is definitely one of the best running backs, if not the best running back to be in Philadelphia by terms of talent, because, I just want to see a full season, obviously, with him, so I can compare stats at the end of the day. But based on talent, he's absolutely the best running back in Philadelphia that I've seen. Maybe I don't know, prime LaShawn McCoy would have something to say. But showing off in that week 1, having that dominant of the ground game, Sands hurts on this, just really focusing here on Barkley. That showed to me that there's nothing to worry about between the rushing attack and the offensive line. And I think we're overreacting about Hurts in the passing game. So this offense is going to be very potent, as the year picks up. But now we can jump onto the defense if you'd like.
That's exactly what I was going to say. We have a lot of comments in the chat coming in about the defense. The defense overall, I feel pretty good about after that game. Now, there's a couple things, if you tuned into, whether it was the live stream on Friday or whether it was the Saturday morning show shortly thereafter, there's some problems that I have with how the defense played. Even though they were gassed by the half, they continued to bend but not break, which is something that I hate that phrase. I hate that, colloquialism, whatever you call it. I hate that concept. It's been spread around Philadelphia as a philosophy for, I feel like, back even during the Doug Peterson era, right? So that's not what I think about when I think about defense. I don't know if I'm just old school, but I'm thinking attack style defense. I'm not thinking bend don't break. They have won me over with the bend don't break style defense, because time after time after time, you see this other team pick up yardage, and yes, they're gaining control of the clock, and those are things that we are inherently are taught you're not supposed to allow to happen. But every single time, they're getting 3 points, they're going 4 and out. Like you are seeing situations where Philadelphia is saving themselves from 7-point daggers again and again and again. Even in that second half, where the defense clearly was not as in it as they were in the first half. I feel pretty confident, just about the team's ability and will. There are still some major question marks, the way the safety group played. Reed Blankenship's interception aside, both he and CJ Gardner-Johnson did not play up to par. There's questions about the pass rush. I don't want to hear it about the field conditions again. I've been through that with the Super Bowl. There was no production from Bryce Huff or Nolan Smith, right? Those are major concerns going forward. However, the way that the defense as a unit performed was definitely good enough for this team to be a true contender this season. So whether it's by making a move by the trade deadline or whether it's by guys picking up and actually performing from here on through the rest of the season, I feel reasonably confident in the defense. But how do you feel, Eric?
You know, the bend don't break mantra, I think it applies to the whole point of a Vic Fangio scheme, but I don't think it applies to the way that the Eagles played as far as the overall product of that game in week one. Because my concern, I guess, really to couple with this is the giving up of big plays. And we saw the giving up of big plays to the same person. Jaden Reed had himself a night. And it happened in a lot of ways. And in a lot of ways, I kind of see the way that Jaden Reed made his plays in the same way that probably the San Francisco 49ers would. How they would use Debo. Things like that. And the Packers, it was effective for them. And it was ultra effective last season for the 49ers when we went head-to-head with them in the regular season. At the end of the day, we had these lofty expectations for this team this season to, maybe even represent in the Super Bowl, but you got to go through San Francisco possibly to do that. If it's happening and again, it's early, so again, an overreaction, but if it can't be figured out soon, then you kind of have to wonder, is this sort of attack against the Eagles defense one that's going to be effective by teams who are quote unquote lesser than the favorites like San Francisco to maybe represent the NFC? Like we're talking about putting ourselves as a team amongst the elite Philadelphia Eagles. Now, one of the things that I was happy to see regarding the defense was the ability to pretty much, like 50% of the time, they, in the red zone, they clamp down. That's, I think, okay for week one. 3 out of 6 times the Packers score in a red zone. That needs to be improved upon as well. If you want to talk about having a great defense this year, then you got to clamp down. You got to play a tighter game. Now, if we're going to look at the area of the defense that concerns me the most, you said defensive line. I'm going with the safeties. And even though Reed Blankenship had an interception, they just weren't in the play often enough. In fact, they were out of the play more times than not. And that might be a big contribution to the night that Jaden Reed pulled off. So you hope all these things get tightened up. They have to get tightened up. And it starts from, kind of understanding the playmakers on the teams. Because last year, it was evident enough that Jaden Reed was a playmaker on this Packers offense. Well, identify that because it's only going to get harder when you go against teams like the San Francisco 49ers. And I don't know if you watched or who watched last night, but McCaffrey wasn't in that game, and their running back went off for like 125, 140 yards, somewhere between that.
Yeah, I would agree that the safety group is my biggest concern. Mostly just because I think the rotation of the defensive line is going to keep guys a little bit fresher. The ability to be able to switch out between Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham. I am concerned by the lack of production by Huff and by Smith. I do think under better field conditions, you will see something out of Huff. Smith, I don't know, because Smith, the speed was showing, but he also still doesn't have a pass rush move. He was just getting run right off the line. Just no ability. His foot was sticking, didn't matter. He had no leverage. He had no strength. He had no counter move. There was nothing that it looked like he could have done to get at the quarterback. And that is terrifying when you think about the fact that he's supposed to be playing a role on this defense moving forward. But focusing on that safety group and again, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in general, I think it's a similar defensive scheme, but you're talking about a new piece that's added with a new defensive coordinator. There's going to be growing pains when it comes to CJ and working, within the confines of this defense. That being said, something that can't continue long term is being out of position, right? So you're going to have to be able to adapt during the play. And if you're a ball hawk, I get it, I respect it. You got to make sure that you're watching the skill position players on the field in addition to the quarterback, right? You can't just be watching the quarterback hoping to come up with the pick. You have to make sure if you're out there as the last line of defense that you're actually playing that free safety type role and making sure that you're going to be able to keep that guy from getting in the end zone. That's my biggest critique of CJ, right? Outside of that, I think that things will come together rather well. Again, it comes from a commitment standpoint to follow through with that. And then as far as Reed Blankenship's concerned, I hate to say it, but we may have seen the peak of what Blankenship has to offer. Which is a guy who's easy to root for. He'll come up with a turnover every now and again, and he's going to blow assignments every now and again also. So, eventually Sidney Brown will be healthy again. I expect long-term him to kind of take over that role, but unless a move for safety is made by the deadline, you're probably looking at Blankenship and Gardner-Johnson starting for the rest of the year. And so you're going to need them to step up.
And just to what your points were a little bit about the defensive line, I think that you'll see a little bit more out of the defensive line per Fangio's scheme once the coverage is better. It didn't take too long for Jordan Love to kind of move that ball out of the pocket, and it's not often that the rush could really even get to him. I think that was part of it as well. Once those smaller details that we've kind of hammered on about the secondary already get tightened up, I think you'll see more out of those rushers like Smith and Sweat.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that's the case. There's the idea of bringing in veteran pass rushers. Khalil Mack is a guy. So Brian talked a lot about bringing in Khalil Mack. That's the star in his eyes is bringing in a guy like Khalil Mack. Whether or not he's available, we'll see when we get a little bit closer to the deadline. It's going to be expensive, as all get out. But I would say probably the biggest guy you can think of on the market, biggest name, biggest talent. I like the idea of adding at least a veteran pass rusher, and it's a little scary because you think about guys that they've added in the past at the deadline. Those veterans who are supposed to help on that title hunt. You think about the Kenny Galladays, and I don't know why I can never Robert Quinn. I can never remember Robert Quinn's name off the cuff, but Robert Quinn. You think about these guys that they've brought into the past, and now it's not worked out. It doesn't mean that you have to be afraid of the trade deadline, right? So looking out for a potential veteran, hopefully a guy who's kind of proven it over past years, not just somebody who was having a hot season for one reason or another. I wouldn't mind reinforcements there. Hassan Reddick's not happening. I can't see a world, and I would love it, frankly. Let me just say that. I would love it if Hassan Reddick, came back to Philly and what would they renegotiated a deal, let's say where they gave him the same extension of what they wanted to give him initially, but you increase the payout this year because the Eagles have capped this year, right? And you want some to carry over, sure, but I think that would be a decent solution for everybody. I don't see a world that Hassan Reddick comes back here, though. I hate to say it.
It would be the funniest thing.
It would be. It'd be hysterical if he came, especially because the Jets defense looked horrendous yesterday against San Francisco.
Yeah, they're on the market, PSN Fantasy. They're on the market.
Yeah, so we'll see if anyone actually picks. Actually, the Jets are going against the Titans, so it might be the week to pick them up.
Hey, they're off the market
against the Titans.
They're off the market. Hey.
Yeah, well, as far as the defense goes and names who could potentially be added, we'll get that a little bit closer to the deadline. But for now, it's up to the guys who are here to prove themselves and to perform and to, effectively convince Howie that he doesn't need to make an addition because these guys are picking up their own level of game. So, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that I want to see moving forward. Obviously, going up against Atlanta's offensive line in this next game on Monday, I think it's a bit easier of a task for this defensive line. So it's an opportunity for them to prove themselves effectively.
Yeah, we'll be discussing more of that preview on Saturday, but I'm predicting a 2-0 start just to get it out of the way. So everybody who says I have to pick against the Eagles, sit on that.
I'll tell you this though, at what point, I don't think I ever would feel bad for Kirk Cousins, but at what point are you tempted to feel bad that he keeps facing the Eagles in prime time and it just never works for him? He changed teams and it still happened once again. So Monday Night Football, Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons going to be taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. It feels like a win, right? So like you said, we'll talk about that more on Saturday, but the vibes are pretty good going in. I mean, we beat the Packers. They lost to the Steelers. Yeah, no, it feels pretty good on this. They lost at home to the Steelers. Eagles had to play in Brazil on a terrible field, mind you. So it feels pretty good. It was a
home game. What are you talking about? It was a home game. What are you talking about?
That's right. Yes, it was technically.
Yeah, the Eagles. It was Philadelphia, Brazil, dude.
The smell of cheesesteaks and freedom ran through the air.
Everybody was tweeting about it on X, dude.
Yeah. All right. I just want to bring this up real quick. Back to the offense. Ben Van Sumeren. Did Ben Van Sumeren I think he got cut today, didn't he? From the practice squad?
I would have to double check. Because I did not see that.
I know they added 2 players to the practice squad. We should have brought this up beforehand, but they did make 2 additions to the practice squad. Oh no, you know who it is? It's the other linebacker. It's the Penn State linebacker. I remember everything about him except for his name. Brandon Smith, I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah, so actually Ben Van Sumeren is still here. So why don't we get his ass in there for the tush push and see what happens?
That's absolutely an experiment waiting to happen. It should happen.
It's not because listen, they're gonna run.
Why don't we just
dumbass push into the ground? And when I say into the ground, I mean into the ground short of the first down and the touchdown mark. Why
don't we just get? The Colts aren't playing Monday night. Why don't we just get Greg Ward on a 1-day contract while he has a contract over there?
Greg Ward's not on the Colts anymore, Eric.
Oh, I thought he was. So what we're saying is now we can have him back.
When did he get added back? I thought he got cut during the offseason.
So he got cut during the offseason from the Colts? I thought he stayed on the Colts. On the practice. Is he not on the practice squad for them?
That's
for him to just be roaming right now, come on home, buddy.
To be roaming is crazy. It's
just to be roaming Greg Ward, dual quarterback, wide receiver, athlete.
Well, wherever Greg Ward is,
Ward is out there. He's a free agent. He's a free agent. Apparently, according to JFizz, our NFL insider.
And Duck. Can't forget Duck.
Oh yeah, Duck. Yeah, he did say that. Oh shit. Yeah. Duck
go.
And JFizz are NFL insiders. They say that Greg Ward is just a roaming spirit in the great farms of the free roaming farms of the NFL free agency. He's just out there waiting to be, just hold on in. Come on home, dude.
Yeah, come on home, Greg Ward. But the thing I will say, is you could possibly try him out at safety because you'd probably get a better performance than the Eagles saw.
He's already been a quarterback and a wide receiver. I mean, like all he has to do now is just play defensive end and safety.
Exactly. JFizz, you are not supposed to out your sources. That is rule number one of journalism.
You're just supposed to say sources tell me. I have my sources.
Yes.
I'm hearing. I'm hearing's a really good one, in fact. You're supposed to say that.
I'm hearing's good. Yeah.
I'm not just tell everybody you're not hearing, and then what the news is. That would be concerning.
Whether it's Google, whether it's another journalist tweet, whatever your source is, just don't out them. That's it. If we can impart a little bit of wisdom to you, it would be that.
But to Fizz's credit, he does credit his sources, which was Google. So
That's fair. That's a lot more than we can say
it's a lot.
about others.
Yeah, yep, that's absolutely true.
We'll leave it at
So-
that. We're not trying to get in trouble on this podcast. We can't. We cannot danger the credibility on Brian's day off. So
Yeah, Brian's definitely, trying to put down his first meal of the day with food poisoning, and we're sitting there endangering everything. We're not to be trusted. We're not.
No. Well, anything else that you want to focus on before we, kind of point?
You want to do a little bit of this and that real quick?
Show? Yeah, we can do some this and that. What do you got?
All right, let's talk about real quick. We brought up for a brief moment the Steelers winning their game. Obviously not with Russell Wilson. So I want to know right now if there's anybody in the chat, be honest. Did you want Russell Wilson to come to Philadelphia? And honestly, why? And I want to do a little sharing moment here and talk about it, because there was a lot of people, there was a lot of talk circulating on sports talk radio during the time that it will be great to give out a lot of draft capital for a very expensive quarterback who is now a backup quarterback to Justin Fields, per Mike Tomlin. So they're 1-0
with Justin Fields. Yeah.
Right. What does that mean? Yeah. Like, I mean, how?
Well, so for context, let's put a little context around it. So, like the big, like, I want to give up the farm for Russell Wilson was before he went to the Broncos, right?
That's fair, but he also we saw that with the Steelers, that the what we saw with the Broncos, it's what it is now.
Well, my point only was that, so we have to go back even further and see what Russ did since going to Denver, and what a nightmare it's been for him since leaving Seattle at all. So, basically anyone who called for Russell Wilson, no matter when it was, because, like we've said, it's been years that people have been calling for Russell Wilson to come to Philadelphia, right? There was no point really where it was going to work out. Like, save for draft day, there was no point where adding Russell Wilson was going to work out for Philadelphia. Whether it was as the new face of the Eagles, before he went to Denver, whether it was as a backup quarterback before he went to the Pittsburgh Steelers, there is no situation where adding Russell Wilson, to me, works out. And, if we're talking about Russell Wilson versus Kenny Pickett, I'll take the bullet. But other than that, like, Kenny at least has a low cap hit. Russell Wilson, did Denver end up paying all that money? I don't know, but there's just so much extra nonsense that you got to deal with having a guy like that on your roster. So that's a problem for the other side of the state. I'm not worried about it, and hopefully there's not a lot of people who were hoping that Russell Wilson was going to be, the quote unquote savior of the Philadelphia Eagles. Because I have more than enough faith in Jalen Hurts that he's still able to take this team back to where they were when they went to the Super Bowl and even beyond.
Yep, and it's just, and you bring up Kenny Pickett. Oh my God, I would, right? With all that comes with Wilson being on the team, I would rather have Kenny Pickett and his small hands any day of the week. The other this or that. Let's talk about Daniel Jones. Let's talk about how bad the Giants are. Daniel Jones, Rex Grossman talent. He's getting Matthew Stafford paycheck. And why did the New York Giants wear a Montreal Canadiens jersey? Can you explain to me what was going on at all during that game in favor, or through the perception of a New York Giant? I wish we had Brian on the show. He would be able to do it, but you're going to have to suffice for this, Zach.
Well, I was going to say, Brian may get this episode canceled if he hears us going too deep on his squad, but. I was texting, one of my buddies, other than Brian, an additional buddy of mine who's a Giants fan. I was texting him about Daniel Jones, and we were talking about the stat of, since he signed that contract, I believe he has more pick sixes than touchdowns thrown, which is just an all-time, like, stand up, round of applause, like, just an all-time stat right there.
Not many people throw 5 touchdowns in a game.
Yeah.
And,
I
he did, just, to both teams, which is kind of even more impressive, really, at the end of the day.
it's something where I have family who are Giants fans. Obviously we just talked about two of my friends who are Giants fans. I've always enjoyed the Giants rivalry. Like with Cowboys is personal, right? Because you just hate the Cowboys, right? With the Giants, it's like, oh, it's fun. It's like college rivalry almost, where it's like, and maybe it's because I haven't really felt that they were threatening. When the Giants were good, the Eagles weren't great. Most of the time, the Eagles have been good. The Giants haven't been good, right? Whatever the case may be, there's always a sort of like, like, oh, little guy, like I like it when they're competitive, right? I kind of feel bad for Giants fans right now having to watch Daniel Jones. But you know who else I feel bad for? I feel bad for Malik Neighbors, who's getting the ball thrown at him 10 feet away by Daniel Jones. And if you watch like his post-game interview, it's one game in, it's already eating at him. And so it's just, how much longer can they go with Daniel Jones? The look into the front office that everyone saw during Hard Knocks over the summer already was laughable. But if the season continues to progress this way for the Giants, you're looking at multiple people fired, and you're looking at a brand new quarterback in New Jersey, come 2025.
Do you think? Never mind. I'm not even going to bring up Russell Wilson there. Even though
no, I think he's out of stops. I think Pittsburgh is it. I don't think anyone's
tongue in cheek. There it is. I kind of brought it up. No, nonetheless though. So is it Tommy DeVito time? Are we breaking out the Miss Rao's spaghetti sauce? Are we doing that?
I would inject his veins with chicken parm, and I'd put him in the game. Yeah. I think that you're ready for that. I think you're ready just to, let Tommy Cutlets go to work and see what happens.
Big fan. Actually, that's the only New York Giant I like, just because I can say Tommy Cutlets. It's pretty cool. I like the name. It's a good name. It's a top 10 name. It's a top 10. It's really the best thing the Giants have going for that franchise is Tommy Cutlets, the name. But yeah, I don't know. Thank you for saying.
You want to be able to like the defense. Like you look at the parts, and you want to be able to like the defense. Just some of the talent that they have there. Then you watch Sam Darnold light them up. And it's like, all right, yeah, he had Justin Jefferson. Aaron Jones had a good game. Jordan Addison was good for the part of the game that he did play. Still consider who's throwing the ball then. I mean, you're talking about a guy who was a pariah in New York / New Jersey when he played for the Jets. Like, and now Sam Darnold is lighting up the Giants. Like, I don't know.
There was only one other quarterback that had a perfect rating against the blitz outside of Jalen Hurts, and it was Sam Darnold.
Crazy. Who would have thought he'd be there?
Yeah, you don't really think
not him.
you bring up him in any good conversation, no matter how much you skew the stats towards one particular whatever. But nonetheless, he cooked overall a pretty bad game going on there. But nonetheless,
yeah, for sure, yeah.
But that's all I got for this or that.
Yeah,
you want to close it down?
Yeah, why don't we? So obviously Saturday, we're still going to have our Saturday show, 9 a.m. We're going to do the whole preseason or pregame breakdown, I should say. So be sure to show up for that. We're going to talk a lot of birds, a lot of falcons, because obviously you can't. I hate when people call the falcons birds too. Like obviously a falcon is a bird. But have you ever heard of somebody like not from Philly refer to the Falcons as the birds?
No, I mean the Dirty Birds. I remember that during like the early 2000s and late 90s or something like that, right? I think that was the only time I've heard Atlanta. Wrong. What was that?
It hits the ear wrong when someone says the Birds, right, and they're not talking about the Eagles.
Well, especially from our area too.
Well, yeah, for sure. So, we're talking Eagles football. We're talking matchups. We're talking Kirk Cousins in primetime. Bijan Robinson, whether you should start or sit him in fantasy for sure. And be talking a lot more of that. And also before the game in Philadelphia, definitely if you're in the Philadelphia area, come out tailgate with Philly. It's going to be a huge home opener kickoff tailgating party with a ton of some of the greats on the tailgating scene. I'll be hanging out with Philaticus actually. So come on, hang out with us, drink some beer, eat some good food, get ready for a great game. And if you're not going to the game itself, over at Xfinity, they're having a pregame party as well with Fletcher Cox celebrating Nick Foles and his retirement. So there's plenty to do, even if you're, not actually going to the game itself. So lot to look out for on that Monday.
It's definitely going to be a banger. But
For
for all
sure.
intents and purposes, what did we say to end the show? I'll let you do it today, Zach.
Well, for Brian Cameron, who obviously could not be here because he's sick to his stomach after watching Daniel Jones throw the ball. For myself, Morgan, who's off coaching somewhere in the frozen wildland of Canada, and Eric Reese, thank you for tuning in for another episode of Flippin the Birds. Tune in next Saturday.
Dang, I thought you were going to hit with the Go Birds. I was giving you the option.
That's your job, man. You do go Birds.
All right,
You know
all right.
that.
I'll take it back. Go Birds!
Flipping the birds. Flipping the birds.